ready? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to call to order the Historic Site Preservation Board. Can we have a roll call, please?
We get tape on this. Yes, Mr. Chairman, John Williams.
Present.
Shevlin Rush.
Present.
Member Hayden.
Present.
Mr. Chespak.
Present.
Mr. Bledsoe.
Present.
Mr. Scott.
Present.
Chairman.
Present. Can we have a report of the posting of the agenda, please?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the agenda was posted last Friday in accordance with state and local procedures.
Thank you. Our first order of business is public comments. Do we have any public comments this morning? Seeing as we have no public comments, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes of March 11th. Do we have any board comments on the minutes? I had one spelling correction for the Idris House. It's on page 3. Agenda item number 6. It's EDRIS, since that's going to be coming back up again.
EDRIS.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you very
AS.
much.
If there aren't any more comments, can we have a motion on approving the minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes as corrected.
Second.
All in favor of approving the minutes? Aye. Minutes approved. Moving on to Chairman's report, the only update I have is to let you know that the survey of Palm Springs Historic Resources is moving, the process of reviewing the proposals is moving forward, and the next step is to interview 2 of the proposals, and hopefully we'll have a final result by the next meeting. Our next item is a public hearing, HSBP number 15. We have an application by the Diocese of San Bernardino for the declassification of Our Lady of Solitude Church as a Class 1 historic site. It's located at 151 Alejo Road West. Do we have somebody? Well, I guess the first thing we'll do is open the public hearing.
No, we'll give you a
Right.
quick staff report,
Staff
Mr. Chairman.
report? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, this is a public hearing. It's been a while since the board's had a public hearing, and let me kind of go through the procedures for a public hearing. The staff will give you an overview report. You have a written report. We will not go through all the information in the report. At the conclusion of the staff report, the board should ask questions of staff at that point so that the public knows what the concerns of the board might be. And once you've asked your questions, then the board would open the public hearing, receive all public testimony that's brought before you today. At the close of the public testimony, you would close the public hearing. You then can ask staff questions, debate amongst yourself, and take any appropriate action that the board might consider. For the public's awareness, I did outline 3 or 4 options relative to potential motions for the board to consider. And obviously, at the conclusion of your public hearing and debate, our role as staff is to try to help you in formulating a motion and then bring back a resolution based upon any specific direction the board may take. And with that, Jing Yu will give you an overview of the staff report.
Thanks, Doug. This was a request that was actually made in writing last year, May 9th, 2002, but staff had been working with the diocese in terms of resolving physical improvements that were made to the exterior of the church since then, so it's been an ongoing process. Essentially, Our Lady of Solitude Church was designated a Class 1 historic site May 15th, 1985. At that time, the diocese had sent a letter to the city requesting a continuance of the item before consideration. However, there was some miscommunication and no follow-up on behalf of the diocese or the city when no further communication was heard in the months that followed that letter requesting a continuance. So the designation moved forward, and really against, I suppose, the wishes of the diocese. And, you know, that's where we are today with this request for declassification. Their reasons are, you know, certainly that they didn't want the designation in the first place as the property owner of Our Lady of Solitude Church, and also, you know, in order to meet the changing needs of their parish. At times, they feel that the city's historical preservation ordinance might be in conflict with their need to meet the needs of their parish. So that's, you know, really two reasons there that they've stated in their letters, and also in conversations with staff about their wishes for declassification. We've attached the original staff report to this report, and also some correspondence for you to take a look at. You know, that's up for consideration for you today. A note regarding the California Environmental Quality Act. In the staff report, it did say that, you know, we certainly felt at the time that it was exempt from environmental review, but upon examination of new case law that was just last year, we didn't know about this. We only found out last night that it is considered a project under CEQA, so an initial study will have to be prepared. So that is actually, you know, just ignore that statement in the staff report. That's incorrect. With that, that's my staff report. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for Jane?
Sure we do.
Okay.
I'm sure we Don't we? I'm sure we all have questions.
Well, yeah, do you have any
Well,
questions about the staff report?
I have a question. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the process of designating the church in the first place? And was there anything that was inappropriate that was done by the board at that time?
Good question.
From my understanding, just at looking at the file, it seemed to me that it was not really inappropriate, but just a lot of miscommunication, and perhaps further effort should have been made by the city or by the board at the time to contact the diocese when further, you know, letters of or phone calls were not received, you know, pursuant to that letter of continuance. That's sort of the only area where, you know, I could see where there may have been inappropriate actions, or, you know, we probably should have made.
Yeah, if I could maybe add, in 1985, you know, the HSPB was conducting its hearings on the property, and the church asked for a continuance. There was a continuance granted. The next meeting of the board, which was on April 8th, the church representatives did not attend, and the board went ahead and made the designation. That went up, you know, for further review. So, you know, I'm not sure there was any inappropriate activity on behalf of the city. I'd more characterize it as, you know, quite possibly because the church representatives were not here. You know, maybe some phone calls could have been made, or a continuance. You know, I'm fully prepared, had the church not attended today, we would have made a very brief staff report. We would have said, today, we recommend a continuance so we can call the church and make sure they're at your next meeting. And once we make that positive contact, if the church did not appear again, we tell you to proceed with your hearing. So I don't think anything, you know, at least in looking at the record, was inappropriate. Back in '85, a whole different set of staff members handled the HSPB, so the only thing we can really draw upon is the written record insofar as what we have in the file, and looking at the minutes and the correspondence back and forth. And we gave you, I think, virtually all of that so that you have that information before you.
Can you tell me when the building was plaqued then?
I did not research when the plaque went up on the building.
Okay.
That would be, you know, back then, I wasn't directly involved in the HSPB. I'm not sure the board was even really active in the plaquing. We'd have to search all the minutes, and
Okay.
you know, we didn't see that as you know, a necessary item. If you would like that, we certainly could, and we could probably find at least the date the plaque went up or thereabouts. I'm not sure if there were any actions by the board back then to approve the plaquing of the building.
So that the public understands, could you tell us what is covered under the historical resolution for this particular structure, inside of the church, outside of the church? What?
It's fairly minor. from what I
The
believe.
designation, Section 2 of the resolution deals with, and I'll just read it, no permit for the exterior alteration of the Our Lady of Solitude Catholic Church shall be granted without prior approval of the city council. And to our knowledge, there's been 2 exterior changes to the facility that did not receive approvals, and we've contacted the church, and that really is what initiated this proceeding. We tried very hard. We met on site with church representatives, an architectural representative, to look at some options. We were hopeful after our field meeting that the church would take a look at the 2 changes that they made. One was a relatively minor painting issue. The other one was the addition of a wainscoting or tile element. We thought the church had probably pretty good reasons for wanting to put the tile up insofar as the color of the church and the scuff marks were a continual maintenance problem, but the material didn't really go with the church. It was a foreign material to the existing facility. We were hoping that they would reconsider that material and with some architectural advice come up with an alternative, and we received a letter asking for declassification, which was what we felt a pretty firm answer that they did not feel they should make those changes.
May I?
Yes.
Of course, we don't like a declassification. That's not what we're here to do. If there was some errors in any staff or any things or issues, or even if there were some errors from the diocese to create something that wasn't really approved, I think the issue is to stop the declassification and for everybody to form a resolution and take care of it and keep the historic building and help them create it better as it needs to be done. Am I not the only one that could possibly think that? What else did I say? And on the effort of the diocese, that they need to be neighborly, too, as much as we need to be.
I think the points you're making were all brought up when this was first raised 2 years ago, and now we're at this point of a public hearing.
And how can we avoid it? How can we not have a declassification?
Well, the point now is to go forward with the public hearing and make a decision. So I think that's where
And there's
we're-
no negotiation where the diocese, where everybody can accommodate each other? I mean, again, maybe I'm just unfamiliar with the process, but can't
Does-
they be neighborly and we be neighborly and everybody get together?
Yes.
hear from the diocese.
Is it, I mean, I don't mean to be out of turn, but is that,
I do have
Okay.
one more quick question that I just didn't understand, that in the original resolution that asked for a Class 7 historic site?
Yeah,
Was that a
originally, the city had 7 classifications, 1 through 7. We amended the ordinance to make it a bit clearer, you know, a class 1 being the most prestigious, you know, from the eyes of the city, you know, and then all the way down to class 3, which just is a recognition of age, you know, of a building. Class 2 is a recognition of the building, but without protection. In that process of amending the ordinance, we reallocated classifications, and a 7 was equivalent to a 1. So we reversed the order.
all right?
Yes.
How can we make it, help make it and keep it? I mean, I drive by it all the time. How can we make it and keep it spectacular and make it better? Isn't that what we're here to do?
Right.
I don't know if you don't mind me saying that to everybody, but that's what I think we are here to do, that. As opposed to declassifying it. How could it be better?
Right. Well, I think unless we have any direct questions for the staff, I think the point now is to move forward with the public hearing, and then we can discuss this once we've taken in the input. So I would like to open the public hearing and to hear any comments from anyone present regarding this issue. So anyone please come forward. And if you can state your name for the record.
My name is John Harrell, resident of Palm Springs, past chair of this board. I have a statement I'd like to read into the record, but I believe the building was plaqued during my tenure as chairman. I can't give you a date of plaquing, but I was at least here when we did it. I don't remember when I was here, but I was here when we did the plaquing. I have copies of this for the board members, if you'd like. Comments on declassification. A community that erases its footprints has no record of its past, no clarity about what it is without a record of what it has been, and no idea what its future can be when it loses sight of its past. My community, Palm Springs, has erased a few of its footprints. More importantly, it has kept more than it has lost. A public and legal process is in place to catalog and preserve the best of our past, a process developed by the people and supported by the people because it serves the people. This process weighs the rights of an individual property owner against the rights of the community, and when the value of a particular property is deemed sufficient, determines that the community's right is paramount. This principle has been upheld in courts across the land. Concurrent with designation of a property as being valuable to the community is the community's right to expect that property to be maintained in a manner that preserves its integrity, keeps its footprint clear. This does not place a special burden on the owner since repair and change are expected and allowed. However, it does demand a respect for due process and a commitment to the aesthetic health of the community, which is one of the factors of its spiritual health. An attempt to declassify a historic site is an affront to the community as a whole, to the memory of those that saw the value of a particular footprint, and even more poignantly, an affront to those involved in establishing the landmark's importance in the first place. It is a selfish and self-serving act that places short-term needs above the good of the community. I urge the Historic Site Preservation Board to reject this and all such petitions. Such a request is anathema, a repudiation of your purpose and intent, and a betrayal of the community that you've been chosen to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Do we have any more comment for the public hearing? Hello.
Good morning. My name is John Scora, and I'm the Director of Administrative Services for the Diocese of San Bernardino.
Thank you.
Also present with me is Father Miguel Ceja, who is the current pastor of Our Lady of Solitude. In a nutshell, the way we see it, that this classification was done neither with the knowledge of nor the permission of the owner, who is the Roman Catholic Bishop of San Bernardino. As circumstance would have it, I am also a member of Our Lady of Solitude, and I just began serving on the parish council. At the time, I didn't understand all of this. But going through our correspondence, we could find no permission signed by Bishop Strehling, who was the owner at that time. Bishop Barnes is the current owner. But I did find a memo written by one of my predecessors, Blanche Stewart, to Bishop Strehling regarding this, and this was dated March 6th of 1985. And she said, I spoke with Richard Pentenod of the Planning Department, and he informed me that a group of parishioners have initiated this action, and their intent is to prevent any sale of the property or closure of the parish. I've spoken with Bill Lemon, he's our diocesan attorney, and we are requesting a continuance. And as Jing said, we never did follow up on this. This just was dormant until 2 years ago. But as I recall, serving on the parish council, that there was a group of parishioners, and our diocese, the Catholic population, started growing tremendously at the time, and there was talk about merging parishes, building larger churches, etc. And I believe Bishop Strehling mentioned, well, maybe the north end of Palm Springs going into Cathedral City is growing. Maybe we should build a larger church in that area. And a group of parishioners got together and they initiated this, that if this were to become a historical monument, then the bishop couldn't sell it, and his hands would be tied. That's why Bishop Strehling asked for a continuance, and Bishop Barnes formally requested the declassification. We have no intentions to change the building. We have no intentions of selling the building. But Bishop Barnes would just like the freedom to do whatever, if he's the bishop at the time, or 20 or 100 years from now. If there's no one to staff the building, it wouldn't make much sense to keep it open. So that basically is our contention, that the owner, who was the Roman Catholic Bishop of San Bernardino, never did approve of this.
Would you entertain a few questions
Sure.
from us?
Sure.
Does anybody have questions? Ron?
All right, there,
Are
we do
prepared
have
to
questions.
to ask a question?
Well, I know you have some. I'd rather hear yours first.
Well, I guess my first question would be, this building was designated 18 years ago.
Mhm.
I'm just curious why, if the church never wanted it designated, why it allowed the plaque to be mounted on the building, and there was never anything raised about it since that original request 18 years ago.
I cannot answer that. I don't know the answer to that. I can surmise. I did talk to the former pastor of the parish, William Erstad, who called me up and said that Bishop Strehling is upset that this happened. I can only surmise that Bishop Strehling said that this was initiated at the local level, you take care of it at the local level. I'm not too sure of that. And Bishop Strehling just never, he makes, generally a bishop visits parishes once every 4 years. He may and may not have looked at the plaque. I can't answer that.
Well, I'd say the plaque has been up for more than 4 years.
Yeah,
sure it
and I
is.
would say it was too bad
Uh-huh,
that he didn't.
uh-huh.
Do you mind?
I would, well, as a point of clarification, the designation does nothing to prevent a building from being sold. And this particular classification only protects the exterior of the building. And so that's when I know when this issue came up 2 or 3 years ago, it was because of these 2 additions to the front of the building.
Mhm, mhm.
And they were very minor changes.
Right.
So, Member Chestnut.
And in addition, the business of the bishop isn't the question here, or the business of the intentions of, the business of the intentions. That isn't what the issue is. And even if it's the closure of that building is not the issue.
Mhm.
It's that we want to preserve the community of that beautiful building. I've been in it. It's fabulous, It could be better and better. So if for business of the bishop to get in the way, that's not, we'd like to work. And how could we make it work? How could everybody be happy, is the question. And so that we don't have a declassification. We don't want the church. I mean, I was raised Catholic. I don't want the church to be the one person who didn't want to be neighborly in the neighborhood, And that's the hope, is that we can preserve it and keep it. And if it's not this church, it's another church or something. But it's a beautiful church, and it's packed with people, and everybody loves to be there. And you could open another church somewhere. I don't know. I'm
Well,
sorry to go on
It's
and on.
okay. If I can pull a question out of what you just said, is there any compromise for the church, or is this black and white? They want the building delisted?
I did speak with Bishop Barnes about this, and he said that he would not like to have any restrictions on any of the buildings. He's got one, and that's on a site, and that's one of our oldest sites in the diocese. But
Which is where?
I believe
Is it-
it's in Saboba.
Saboba.
It's my understanding that even if the alterations that were made to the exterior should have been brought before the planning commission as well as the historic site. So if it's declassified, would you still go before the planning commission and ask them to review what you did to the church?
Oh, sure, yeah.
And do you plan to change, if they instructed you to change it, would you change it?
Then we would change it, sure.
Okay, thank you.
I have an issue, and it's more of a theological issue, I guess, about preservation. I think we're all on the same page, that we agree that the church is an asset to the community. And to follow up on what Jim said, and also what John Harrell said, the process for preserving assets to the community is to have them classified as historic sites. So not that even any of us around this table, but maybe 20 or even 100 years from now, numbers you used, the building would still be intact. Is there a way that we could somehow work a compromise, or perhaps continue this whole process, go back to your bishop, perhaps educate him on the value of the designation and the fact that it doesn't preclude him from selling the building if he feels that's necessary, or changing the building as long as there's approval from this board? Do you think that's a possibility?
I don't think it's a possibility. I can go back to him, but I have a question for all of you, and I don't know the answer. That's why I'm asking. Truly, the bishop at the time did not know that this was going to happen. Could this happen to any building without the owner's permission? Could it happen to my house? Could it become a historical monument without my permission?
Maybe the staff can respond to this.
Well,
The
wait, if I could-
unawareness
just a
isn't-
clarification, there's a letter in here dated March 7th, 1985, from the Pastoral Center.
Right, that's the
saying that you
Chancery
wanted,
office.
so they knew something was cooking.
Yes,
Right.
yes.
Don't say that they didn't know it was happening.
Yeah, can't they forgive us?
No, it was, I'm sorry, but
No,
it seems to me that they didn't follow up on the
No, they
continuation.
didn't. You're right. You're absolutely right. They did not follow up. But I'm speaking on behalf of the bishop who may and may not have known that this issue was resolved, but he never knowledgeably agreed to it. In fact, I know by being at the parish at the time, he disagreed with it at the
Has he
time.
been in there when it's full of people?
Yeah,
and-
it's a beautiful church.
It's a beautiful church.
I serve as a deacon at that church. It's a
Oh,
beautiful
neat.
church. It's my church. It's
Yeah,
my
neat,
parish.
neat.
I have a question. Regarding the timing of this issue coming back, to open this case back up, are there any plans right now for the church or the property itself, or
Oh, no.
expanding another direction, or building another church somewhere else, or?
No, historical patrimony to the Catholic Church is very important, as just looking at the history of all the buildings. We have no intentions whatsoever of doing anything with the property. It's just that Bishop Barnes' concern is that it places a restriction on the owner of the property to do something. And quite frankly, I know that's your concern, that someone might do something with it, so.
Could we ask staff on the issue that you brought up, if the owner of the building were notified, as in this case he was, is it then within the legal bounds of the HSPB after notification and no response to have a property designated?
That issue comes up on a lot of the issues we deal with private properties, particularly commercial properties. Under the ordinance, the HSPB makes a recommendation to the city council. The city council actually makes the designation. And yes, they can designate properties as historic without the consent of the property owner. I can tell you that the current city council prefers not to do that, and works very hard and asks the board and the staff to work very hard to try and get willing property owners to the greatest degree we can. But we've had properties designated with strong protest from the property owner, and I'm pleased to report that after the feelings and had settled, that when we went back and said, would you like a plaque, they've accepted the plaques and plaqued the property. So,
It's such
You
a
know.
great compliment.
but
Which
you
is
know,
sort of what happened in this case.
certainly I can't track it as well as I would like to, but certainly the fact that we installed a plaque on the church property, we had consent of the church, we would not trespass to put the plaque up. And a city employee has done virtually every plaque, but maybe one or two. so that we know where they're at and how they're mounted, and we're very confident it'd be very difficult to remove them. So it's something that the city council's position has been to try to find willing property owners. In this particular case, we can't tell you through the record all of the correspondence and discussions that staff members may have had. I worked with Richard for a number of years. Richard Patnod, the planner that was assigned to the HSPB. Richard was very conscientious about trying to communicate. So I have to assume that because there is correspondence in the file, that at least they were aware that there was a pending meeting and asked for continuance, that there was some dialogue. So, to answer very specifically, yes, the city could designate a single-family home, a church, a commercial building, or any other type of structure that has authority under the city ordinances.
Yes, Jim.
Yes, I had a question. I viewed the designation in this case as an insurance policy against any kind of hasty modifications or decisions that would besmirch the incredible history of this church. If the owner would like to have this declassified, I was just curious if you had any idea of what percentage of the parishioners would want this historic treasure's insurance canceled and maybe the plaque removed. How is that supported by the parishioners?
I have no idea the percentage. I would guess that there would be a large number that would be against declassifying the building.
Thank you.
That was on.
Jim,
May
I'm
I-
sorry, Ron.
Ron, may I? Maybe it seems that if the bishop didn't know what happened and staff kind of didn't know what happened, and no offense to anybody, and the parishioners aren't knowing what's happening, can't we just stop all this and everybody figure it out?
Well, this was initiated by some parishioners, apparently, to prevent Bishop Strailing at that time, the bishop, from selling the property. That was
Which
their
isn't,
intent.
the bishop can sell anything, but the thing is, we want this, in the city, we want this to remain as fabulous as it is.
One concern that I have, that let's say the building was sold, and it would remain intact as it is, but the interior were to be changed to a bar and grill or whatever.
If it was sold, that's another issue.
Right,
Right
right.
now, it's keeping
Right.
it as it is.
But at that point, it would no longer be owned by the Roman Catholic bishop, and the new owner could do what they wanted to do with the interior of the building, and that would be the diocese's concern, that what would be done with the building when it was no longer owned by the diocese.
The responsibility would transfer to the new owner, and the classification only protects the exterior.
Right.
So there's nothing to stop any owner from changing
The interior.
anything to the
Right,
inside.
Right, right.
So,
And that's our concern.
yeah, and so that's,
All right, so then we did it. There's no concern, we're done, right? Everybody's okay?
No.
Oh. Darn it, I was just hoping. So what is the problem, Mike? What do we have to do? See what I mean? Am I the only one that wonders what is the problem? Why do you have to, we don't want to be the neighborly people, forget it, we don't
Well,
want
I
commit
believe the
this
parish has
building,
been
this beautiful
neighborly
building.
for 75 years. I think 1928, the church was built, and it was
to.
first.
So why end it?
It's not ending.
All right.
It's not ending. Not ending at all.
okay. Does anybody have any more questions? Yeah, we have more. Thank you very much for
You're very
entertaining the
welcome.
questions.
Okay.
And, do we have any more comments from Mr. Kopelk?
Hi there. My name is William Kopelk.
Keep that away.
All right.
Get a pop from the speaker.
Sorry. And I'm a resident here of Palm Springs. I'm also president of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation. And I'm here today to urge the Historic Site Preservation Board to reject the de-designation of the historic classification of Our Lady of Solitude. I believe this is the first request for a de-designation, and it must be prevented, as it sets a very dangerous and damaging precedent for the city of Palm Springs in terms of historic preservation. So that's really it in a nutshell. Thank you.
Thank you, William. Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we received correspondence via telephone today, and I was asked to read a statement from Tracy Conrad, a citizen of Palm Springs and also a planning commissioner. And she goes on to say, I would like to object to any action toward declassification of Our Lady of Solitude Church as a historic site. Indifference to the historic significance of this church by the current property owner should not be considered reason enough to remove the protection of the classification. As a member of the Historic Tennis Club neighborhood, I must report that this organization is also adamantly opposed to such action and encourages the HSPB to support and appreciate this historic property. Tracy Conrad.
Thank you. Okay. Now, Doug, is it correct thing to close the hearing and then discuss it?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to give you an update on an issue
Thank
after you
you.
close the hearing.
Okay. I'd like to close the public hearing unless there's any more comments. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
To just thank everybody for showing up and listening to us, I think is important.
Thank
And
you.
maybe hopefully understanding what we're trying to do.
Doug?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, once you close the public hearing, the board can deliberate and give staff direction. Because this is an item that is very sensitive to the Catholic Church as well as to the board, we're asking that you direct us to prepare a resolution with the direction that the board would like to take, vote on that direction. We'll prepare a resolution, bring it back for your adoption at the next meeting. The outline that I gave you had a range of options, and certainly the board can consider any type of action it wants, and we'll try to help you. In the event the board does want to declassify the site, we did some subsequent evaluation, and Jing and Kathy were working on the internet last night and looking at court cases. And they found an appellate court case that basically has determined that the declassification of a historic site is a project pursuant to the California Environmental Quality Act. What does that mean? If the board's desire is to declassify the site, you cannot do so with the information that you have in front of you today. You would have to continue this item, direct staff and the property owner to prepare a historic site evaluation. We would also have to prepare an environmental assessment, and if it was considered a significant impact on the environment, we might have to prepare an environmental impact report. I can tell you that if we had to go down that path, it would be rather costly, and procedurally, a negative declaration would probably take 3 or 4 months to put together. We would need the assistance of consultants that the church would have to provide. If an environmental impact report were to be required, that's a 9 to 12 month process, 6 of it in process only, so it's a pretty substantial effort. We've not consulted with the city attorney, but if the board's desire is to declassify, my suggestion is that you look at item number 3 that we put in the options, and that would be to direct us to evaluate that issue further, consult with the city attorney, and bring back a report at your next meeting for your consideration. So that completes our report. Mr. Chairman, I do have to apologize. I have a meeting set up with some
Okay.
state and
Can
federal.
I get one quick question in
Sure.
before we lose you? If the board chooses to maintain the designation, does the church have the option of appealing this to the city council?
Yes.
Okay, so it's not the end of the road for them?
No, they would have to appeal to the city council, and
Okay.
we work with them on the time frame for an appeal.
Great. Thank you. All right, would the board like to discuss this issue?
I'd just like to say that I attend services at the church. I live in the neighborhood. And, you know, this board has changed since 1985, and the city council members have changed, and bishops change, and pastors change, and the congregation has changed. It's a very interesting congregation. But the thing that remains constant is the building. And, you know, to leave it up to the whims of a parishioner to decide to paint something blue this year and maybe next year it'll be painted pink or yellow is not appropriate. We have a heritage here, and it's my belief that the building should remain a designated landmark. Thank you.
Other comments?
Well, I would like to echo Bill's comments as well. I do not attend services in the building, but I do drive by it, as you do most every day. On the other hand, I do understand some of the challenges that the church has. I'm a little concerned that apparently this issue has been going on for quite a number of months. I'm new on the board as of, when was our first meeting? August of last year. And there's a letter here that's dated in November, and it's the first time that we've seen it at a board level. So I would encourage the board to try and come up with some sort of motion that would allow either board members or staff to try and work with some of the people that were representing the church here today, because I really think we all have the same goal in mind. And perhaps it's more of an education process with the bishop to try and, before we just close the door on this, which I assume will result in an appeal to the city council, I'd like to take one more stab at it and see if we can't keep it on the roster and convince the powers that be that this is the best course of action. There seems to be some misunderstanding. You indicated today, or at least the representative of the church indicated, that it might hinder a sale of the building. That's not the case. You can't change the exterior of the building. That's also not the case. You can change it, but it does need approval by this board. So really the things that you want to do with the church, I think, are in keeping with keeping the historical site status. So I would encourage us to try and come up with some sort of compromise and see if we can convince the bishop that keeping the historical status is the best solution.
Any other board comments?
I have to agree with Board Member Scott and Board Member Williams, because that's what we're trying to do here. And there has to be some negotiation. We're all neighbors, and we're all, it is a beautiful place to keep and maintain. And it can still be changed and sold and fixed and updated appropriately to comply, to comply, you know.
Well,
But thank you.
thank you. Joe?
Yes, I wanted to agree with the other board members, also stating that, in my personal opinion, I've always felt that churches are somewhat in public domain, and that being that they're really not on the tax contributors and so forth, I think that the public has a greater interest in church properties than perhaps if this were a bank or it were a hotel, and they needed to make changes in order to have it financially viable. If there was a duress situation and there were modifications that were necessary and there was a hardship situation. And I just don't see that being the case here. This has such tremendous public benefit. It's hard to imagine declassifying that. Thank you.
I would also echo the sentiments that have been expressed by the board. I do think in terms of negotiation that the process, inherent in the process or in the processes that follow from a Class 1 designation is negotiation in terms of any changes, as Board Member Williams mentioned, any changes that would occur would come before the board, and those would be considered, and also the needs of the parishioners and of the diocese would be considered in terms of those changes. So because that is something that is allowed throughout the process, the move towards declassification seems a little bit of a stretch. It seems that any of the needs that would change of the parishioners of the diocese for the church, would be protected and could be negotiated via the board, and also preserve the historical integrity of the church. At the same time, I also am a little bit uncomfortable not having a better read as to what the parishioners as a whole feel about this process. Mr. Score did estimate the number of parishioners who would support declassification, but one thing that stuck with me as we were discussing the history of this is that parishioners initiated the classification to begin with. So to not have a better understanding of how the parishioners as a whole feel regarding the preservation of the church historically does leave me a little bit uneasy in terms of making a decision about the declassification.
I guess in summary, it doesn't seem like anybody is any of the board members are voicing support of declassifying the building. But I would say, since I've actually sat on the board for 4 years now and went through this process with the church for about 2 years, I would say we've had, virtually no compromise on this issue. So I'm less optimistic about, trying to reach a compromise at this point. We've had, less than friendly communication regarding this from the beginning. So I feel that it's somewhat just disingenuous to come before us 18 years after the designation to get it declassified. I think the value of this building and to the history of Palm Springs, is paramount, and I would be in opposition of declassifying it. But one of our available motions is to continue this until next month's meeting, if the board would like another chance at communicating with the church.
Is it possible to beg the bishop to stop this? I mean, is that how far we have to go? Because I think we all care, and I think the city matters, and we were all chosen to be here to help the city.
Well, this board has made motion in the past for the planning department to reach out to the church and communicate. And I don't know if the staff has anything to add to the communication that
Even
has
if there
been made.
was any errors, really, in the,
Right.
in any staff for the past or through the church for years or through the board for years.
Right.
Isn't it possible? Do we have to beg the bishop? Can we all write him?
In
What, is this
essence,
crazy?
I think this has been done. I'm less optimistic that there's going to be a softening on their part. They've been pretty adamant from the beginning to delist it, and I think it's a terrible precedent. So
I'd like to ask the staff for some clarification on the issue that you just brought up. In the November 11th letter, I just highlighted one sentence here. It says, "And I agree the issue should be placed in front of the Historic Site Preservation Board for requested re-evaluation." And to my knowledge, I'm assuming that issue is the wainscoting that was previously mentioned in the painting of the shell alcoves. And that issue has not been put before the board for re-evaluation, even though it was requested by the owners of the church. It goes on to say, "I expect some form of perhaps fees is required." Could you elaborate a little bit more on the interaction with the church, Jing, and tell us what happened?
Your question is regarding the exterior improvements? The November 11th letter, that
Can we just pray?
The-
Maybe we could just pray.
the last two pieces
The
of...
letter states, "Mr. John Sikora has asked that I follow up with you to seek a remedy for the outstanding issues for the tile installed as a protective wainscot and the painting of the shell alcoves of the two statues on the front elevation of the church." This was sent by Ted Furlow, who was a construction coordinator. That, to me, speaks to some sort of compromise. Then it says, "I have a copy of your letter, July 29th, and it says, "And I agree the issue should be placed in front of the Historic Site Preservation Board for a requested reevaluation." And I don't think that issue has ever come back before this board.
This, just to place that letter in the context, Doug and I actually met with representatives of the church, I believe it was last June or July. And then so that's what he refers to, the July 29th letter, when we'd written to the diocese as a follow-up to that meeting. At that meeting, we met with Mr. Scora and also someone that was helping them with regards to finding alternative materials for the wainscot, and also the painting in the alcoves. And at the time, we had asked them to continue working with the consultant that they had with regards to alternative materials, and that, because the work was done without HSPB approval, without planning department approval or planning commission approval, that was what he meant for the requested reevaluation for that. It would have been the first time that tile issue would have been come before the board.
Well, if you met with them in July 29th, then the letter continues, "I visited the site and discussed the issues with the pastor, and he is prepared to move on the issue. We both are hopeful that some compromise can be arranged." Now, my question is, if this sometime after November 11th had been brought before the board, could we perhaps have reached a compromise, and we wouldn't be at this point that we are now, where the owner is now requesting declassification, and more importantly, could we re-examine those two issues, which seem to be the most important issues for the owners, at a later board meeting and come to some sort of compromise?
Certainly, that if that's your desire, we can certainly do that. As I understand it, just looking at the record of correspondence, the request for the reevaluation of the exterior improvements was made in the context of their request to still declassify the building. I can't speak on behalf of the diocese, but that's how I understand it. But certainly, if you'd like that issue to be brought forward at a future HSPB meeting,
Well,
that would certainly be
the nature of a compromise is two parties working together. We need the church to want to compromise in order for us to reach one. So, I haven't seen that. So,
The sense I get is that the issue is bigger than just the wainscoting and the painting of the niches. It's that they want the church to be declassified, no matter what happens. And I don't think, this has been going on for a year, and they finally said, let's just go for the declassification. So even if we could reach agreement on what they did to the church, I'm not sure.
I think I can't imagine, even if after an appeal, that city council would enjoy this either, especially after we all feel it shouldn't happen. So, not that it's a dead end, but I think we should all work together with the diocese and the bishop and whoever all the players are, and make it happen in a nice way.
well,
I'll just stop already.
I don't see that as one of our motions, but if anybody is prepared to make a motion.
I'm prepared to make a motion, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to make a motion that we continue this hearing to the next May 13th meeting of the HSPB, and as part of that motion, that the representatives of the church who are here go back and communicate to the bishop, who presumably is the sole owner, some of the things that seem to be confusing. Number one, that the church can be sold, if that's the owner's desire, and also that changes can be made with HSPB approval in advance, and also that we would like to see this maintained as a historical site and reach some sort of compromise on these two outstanding issues. We've already heard from Mr. Evans that it would be a long legal process to declassify, requiring possibly even an environmental impact report. So, knowing that now, I think I would like to make that motion that we invite the church representatives to come back at our next meeting and we continue the hearing.
Second.
Okay, can we have a vote? Is that all in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Yes, okay, unanimous approval. We approve motion number 4 with the option of reopening the public hearing at the next meeting, and we would request the members from the church to show up on May 13th. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks, everybody, for coming for this. Okay. The next thing we'd like to do is move agenda item number 6 up to the top and get the Tramway Visitor Center update, if they're still with us. Good morning.
Good morning. We have drawings up
Introduce
on.
yourself, please, Lance.
My name is Lance O'Donnell. I'm one of the architects working on the conversion of the tramway gas station to the City of Palm Springs Visitor Center. And today we have an update, and I'll walk up to the board in a moment, but just to let everybody know what has taken place and transpired since the last time we presented this project. We were asked to master plan and take a look at some of the connections to future opportunities in the area. And so what I'd like to do now is just walk up to the board and kind of walk you through some of the opportunities that we saw and were encouraged to One of the first things that we looked at was some connections to the existing gateway sign. So coming from the building to the gateway sign, just with some trails and paths that would lead a visitor who's entering the city, parking, getting information about hotels, opportunities, entertainment, and various other things here at the building, to then be able to walk out through a more or less a natural setting with desert flora out to the gateway sign. There was a competition for the gateway sign, and the gateway has been, at least the design had been approved, and they're in the process of determining funding and determining how that will, eventually come to fruition. But right now, what we've done is just put the pathways in to allow a visitor to actually go out there. Another thing that we looked at was the possibility of moving parking from around the building, which really created a constraint in both pedestrian traffic, vehicular traffic, and just ease of movement throughout the building. So with the council and the mayor's intervention, they did talk to the owner of the property, and we have designated this area immediately to the west as the potential parking area. And right now we're working out that parking. So all the parking gets off the site, so the site can remain fairly pristine in its environment around the building. The drive remains in the existing location. There will be a drop-off along the curb here, and then there's 37 parking spaces. There are 4 RV parking spaces and 3 bus parking spaces in this parking lot, as well as a small lot up here, which would be for the employees that are housed inside the various organizations in here. And that was designated as a good spot for them because they park once and then travel into the building before there's actually a lot of traffic and activity. And then at night, during the winter, when often it's dark when they leave, they would be in a place where there would be at least activity, and they could feel safer in that location. The intervention that we looked at previously is still pretty much in the same location. And this was the building that houses the toilets and storage. So those items are still being brought out of the building, and we're showing them here in this corner. We had a meeting with some of the staff members yesterday and some of the council, and we're encouraged to move that structure over here and start to create an anchor along this pedestrian way. So that's one of the things that we're going to start working on real soon. Other than that, everything is, the interior spaces are as you saw them last time. They're aren't any of the historic concrete block walls being touched. The glazing and everything's being left intact. What you see in this diagram here is just the internal intervention, this glass wall, 7 foot high, counter here for the tribe, counter for tourism, various retail displays here, various hanging displays here that would have posters of various hotels and opportunities, small little video area, and then just staff areas back here. And the staff areas back here are for reservation workstations. And the way the building functions is that reservationists often are on the phone taking reservations, but if a bus or a large group of people come in, they travel from back here up, and they help up here at the desk for all the overflow people that come in. So it's really a back and forth use. So these spaces were determined to be quite important in this space. And these are also low partitions. So mainly low partitions, glass, steel, and metal being the primary materials used indoors. And that's a pretty good overview. I'd like to take any questions that anybody may have.
2 questions, Lance. Is anything happening to the original exterior perimeter walls, which were part of the original designation? And is this just a windscreen that's across the back? I mean, what is this? Is this something?
That is, in this drawing, it's a planter.
Oh.
And it was a planter to try to get the pedestrians or the users out around the sides of the building and then into the main entry doors underneath the canopy. If this moves over here, this becomes less important, and it may become a windscreen or just a landscape element. As far as the original walls, we were showing a retaining wall here inside the historic walls that bound the perimeter on the west and north. This will be going away when this building moves over to the southern edge here. These trails and pathways, there is no historic block that is being removed in order to get these trails and pathways. These trails and pathways go through those metal elements between the block wall, and they're so designated so that they fit within the modulation of the building itself. The one other thing we did look at was, at the encouragement of this board, was to look at the potential for bringing in a pedestrian walk in the front underneath the point of the canopy. And we've done that so that a pedestrian or bike rider could come in here, and there are a couple ramps because we do have about a 24-inch to 32-inch grade change between the finished grade in here and the roadway and sidewalk out here. So there is an entry in here, and it helps to engage the whole front of the building.
That's great. And let's work our way around.
2 questions. One, the new wall that was built on the outside, again, how high is it planned for? And then this issue about moving the bathrooms and toilets. You haven't studied it yet, but I suddenly see, I sort of like the idea that it was going to be behind the building and sort of less empowering. And now that it's going to be kind of brought up to the edge of part of the wing, I'm a little worried about it. I'm worried about the effect it'll have on flight.
If I could add to that too, that was my question, is because last meeting, Lance, hello, okay, last meeting it was so clear that it was meeting up with the architectural balance of the building, and it was lining up, and we were happy with that because it felt that it was kind of behind, and it worked visually. So I have to agree with Board Member Scott.
We've been encouraged by various members of the city to look at a building that really becomes more background. So in materiality, in height, and in other things, it will be scaled and positioned in a way that it's not competing with the architecture. This building didn't necessarily compete with the architecture of the Frey gas station, but it did make its own statement. So, our intention is to have a building that is is a background building, but is so finely detailed and poetic on its own that it'll stand here in a way that it's not detracting from the building, nor at the same time calling attention to itself. The other question was, how about the wall, and where are we with the height of the front wall? Our intention still is to keep this wall at approximately 3 feet. It may work out that it's 32 inches just because there's a block module underneath that the plastered wall. So it will be coming down to 32 inches or 36 inches or somewhere in that neighborhood. So it will be a low wall. So on the interior, it may appear as a 24-inch wall. On the exterior, it may appear as a 38, 39-inch wall. But it's mediated by an existing wall that was built with the original gas station. There's that small little planter wall out here. So the height between the small little planter wall and that white wall, or the addition wall, will be about between 18 and 24 inches. So there'll be a step up of the existing wall will remain. The wall that was brought in with the Montana St. Martin project will be brought down to, in relation to this, about 18 to 24 inches.
I have a question, I'm sorry.
You'll
If
have questions.
If the bathrooms were to move to the spot you just showed us, what would occur in the area where they were previously?
That's a good question, and probably should have answered that a long time ago. By moving the toilet facilities and storage down here, it does a couple things for us. There is a transformer and switchgear here that we can't move. If we tried to move it, the expense is cost prohibitive. So we need to somehow screen that. So having the building down here close to utilities, close to a future sewer connection, it just helps us economically get this building in a location that it will be a permanent structure. And then it frees up this area back here for potential master planning down the road. And there have been developments that and things that we may not ever know until this thing comes in operation, and it's determined that yes, there's just not enough space. Ideally, what everybody would love to have would be almost a museum building in here where there are no administrative functions, where there are no desks and people talking on headset phones, but rather it's just a clean, open space, and it has some retail function, but it has a lot of historic diagrams and displays. And so that's the ultimate goal. So in order to achieve that ultimate goal, we may have to move some of this administrative function out into a future phase or future building that would wrap around the back or be pushed in a location where it could be separated from the building, and then have a relationship and start to create some external court areas out here, but no physical connection to the building. So that's the twofold effect of moving this down here is some economies, as well as freeing up what we hope to be the future relocation of the administrative functions out into a permanent building out back.
I have a couple questions. The first one, you're obviously taking a lot more land now. Is that city-owned land?
You want to speak to that?
Actually, this whole parcel is part of a 36-acre parcel, and it's owned by the Nichols family. Culver and Sally Nichols built the gas station. Steve Nichols is the administrator of the family trust that still owns it. The city sign is actually on a little corner of that parcel, on a very loose and relatively informal license or some sort of lease agreement. Through conversations that we've had with the family over the last couple of months, they've agreed to commit the land and the access, and it may not be this much, it may be this much, for the access back and forth to the sign as well as for the parking. Relatively, it's probably a little bit more formal arrangement than what we have. Actually, probably quite a bit more formal arrangement than we have right now, but we don't have to buy it. And ultimately, he would like to develop the 36 acres, and sees that this is a good, it's a good kind of linchpin for the future development there. One of the consequences of not having this under fee ownership or not having it under a 99-year lease is that what we had proposed as a parking area on the current site, which was a really high quality concrete parking area, this will probably be asphalt and still in ADA compliant and still an okay parking lot, but not really up to the standard that we would have built here, because over time it may be relocated, it may be tinkered with or tweaked or something like that. So to the extent you need to be tearing it up, you don't need to be spending $5,000 or $6,000 a space and then having to go tear that up. So, but it works. We've got a good relationship, and it does allow us to have more space for parking, more parking spaces with having the whole on-site portion of the project kind of free and open for pedestrian and for people circulating, rather than having the driveway basically come through here and you're sort of dodging cars and RVs and buses and things like that.
I would just encourage you to try and make that agreement as formal and as long-term as possible.
No, I agree. We're meeting tomorrow. And then
I'd have a second question for the architect. Because I went to a couple of meetings, one of which is the Tourism Advisory Council that Linda Ford has, and 5 people said, what about the wall? I want a little more clarification. From the inside, right now, the wall is 7 feet high, and from the inside it will be 32 inches high?
From the inside right now, it is 7 feet high, and in order to achieve that 7-foot height, it does slope up as it wraps around as we come to higher grades over here. And I don't know if anybody's noticed that. It looks horizontal when one looks at it, but it's actually lower here, 7 feet relative to the interior finish grade, higher back here, 7 feet relative to the interior grade. So the grade is varying in here. The height on the inside will be approximately 24 inches, not 32 inches, but the profile of the wall may be anywhere along here because of varying grades between 18 and 32 inches as seen from the outside, or 36 depending upon the block module that we discover once we start taking the plaster off of the wall. So because of the varying heights inside and because they're not exactly following the curb line out here, there is some variation. We're trying to keep it as horizontal as possible.
I thought you said there was a 32-inch grade difference between the inside and outside of the wall.
There's a 32-inch grade difference here, and then back here it becomes almost that these two areas are on grade. They're the same grade, the inside and the exterior. The inside and the exterior here are on the same grade, and then it starts increasing till we get here. And I think all this was because there's a flood control basin right here where all the nuisance water travels to. So the curb and the finished grade out here just dip down, and then they, relative to the inside-outside, become on the same grade again back over here.
So at that maximum grade, right in the front, where you're projecting the walkway or ramp, from the exterior, you would see approximately 50-something inches of wall, the small retaining wall, and then another 32 inches of current wall. I'm still unclear about that. What would you see from where your finger is right there?
What would we see from where? We would see the curb or the sidewalk. We would see the existing wall, the existing height, and at that point it looks like it's 3 courses, so it's 24 inches. Then we would see the wall behind that, which would vary between, because we haven't actually drawn this yet, it'd vary between 18 and 24 inches above this low wall. Absolute height of that wall there could be greater than 36 inches, as seen from the sidewalk here, but it's mediated by having this low wall in front, so it's a stepping effect.
Thank you.
I have a question regarding the interior. You said that everything is low. How low? Is it all basically the same height, all the partitions and everything in there?
The goal internally was to maintain a view up into Chino Canyon. And to, in order to achieve the view up into Chino Canyon, we need to maximize a view out of these back windows back here. These were, in the original design, when it was a gas station, these were the service bays. So they were solid metal roll-up doors. And there are 3 of them. In the most recent intervention here, they became offset pivot doors. So there are offset pivot doors here, here, and here. So this whole rear can open up. And above that, above about a 10-foot line, there's clear story windows going up to about 13 to 14 feet. It slopes up back in here. So what our goal is to in all instances maintain that above that 10 foot into that clear story or transom glass, maintain the sight lines up to Chino Canyon. So in order to achieve that, these things have been modulated so that the visitor standing out here can always see over that partition and then at least through the upper glass to Chino Canyon and to the top of the ridge.
May I? Again, thank you for all your presentation. I have to say a bunch of things, if you don't mind. I have to, the interior thing, I'm all for. I've been there. I like all that stuff. I think it's a neat plan. The bathrooms thing, move the bathrooms, do all that, that's okay because it allows for the futures for other offices. It allows to clear out the room later. Okay, so that all sounds fine. The wall thing, so many people in the whole world have complained about it, so I'm sure you're going to take care of that, okay? But I'm adamant about this, what's called a design approved, this little sign as you come into the city. And maybe that's a planning thing, maybe that's the whole world issue, but if we have anything to do with that, we should care about this signage, this new little welcome to Palm Springs thing, and now here's this building that's our tourist center. If there's anything in the world we could care about, I think that this is the most important thing to care about. Right down to what that type looks like and how it's going to be lit.
Are
and
you
how it'll
talking
be
about the
landscaped.
Welcome to Palm Springs sign?
Yeah.
Okay.
That
really
and
isn't
because it's
our
part of this
purview.
little park that will be, and by the way, in the park too, you'll be able to walk through and be near it. I mean, all that is spectacular.
Okay.
So, I mean, everything will be great.
Well, maybe we can see that at some point. I know it's not part of the HSPB purview, and it's something that's already been approved.
Come on.
But
Come on. I care. Okay.
Well, then maybe you should show up at those meetings.
What
You wanna-
meetings are those?
Come back to my office after the meeting. I've got the design in the office.
All right.
But it did go through a design competition, like Lance was saying, and it was selected by the Arts Commission. And I think the council, it went up to the council.
And they're
council
happy.
approved. Yeah, they're happy with it. It's very,
All right.
it's very compatible, very sympathetic to what's happening in the building. So I think you'll be happy with it.
That
Yeah.
brings up while you're on the signage issue, was there any discussion or decision about signing the building itself as a visitor center?
One of our team members is Gary Wexler, and Gary Wexler was on was one of 3 members on the winning entry gateway design team. So the graphics that are used and that were approved by council will be the same sort of graphics and signage that we'll be using here in this building, so that there's a seamless transition from the entry gateway sign to signage and other elements that are occurring on this building.
But you don't know where those will be yet.
Well, our intention at this moment is to have a modified pole sign here, a vertical element that's quite in keeping and similar to the sign that was on the gas station. The sign that was on the gas station was a pole sign with an elliptical feature at the top. Our intention is to do a vertical feature with the letters Palm Springs Visitor Center vertical so that it can be read both coming and going along North Palm Canyon here. Any other type of sign for this would be mounted on a wall or mounted on some sort of plaque, and it just, because of the speeds and visibility, something vertical seems to be the best way to achieve visibility and having a tie-in with the existing sign. Thank you.
I just wanted to thank you, Lance. I think you're doing a brilliant job on this. I spent about an hour on the site on a kind of real blustery day, and I sat up on the wall and observed the corridor to the sign and how fabulous, what a brilliant thing that would be to have that be pathways through there, and how that just makes this such an incredible opportunity for our visitors. There are a couple of little things that struck me about it that I thought were important. One was I never appreciated what the gallery contributed in terms of physical improvements to that, and I think that needs to be recognized almost as much as the fact that it was the Fry gas station. I think the doorway that's existing now in that wall, which was so beautifully done, inasmuch as if that's not going to be used as a parking lot now, maybe you could save that door the way it is, that with the sign on the back that's so brilliant, it's just brilliant, and save that section of wall and sign and commemorate that to the gallery people that did such a beautiful job. Secondly, I wanted to say that it is still the Fry gas station, and to me, we don't have anything that symbolizes that this was designed as a gas station. And what I was going to recommend, and it's might sound a little out there, if anybody's seen in Laguna Beach the Ruby's restaurant, which is tremendously successful as a visitor serving and a commercial entity, which is really what this is going to have, is this visitor serving. They actually have antique cars posed in front, which you could do under the canopy, have maybe an antique car or two with maybe an old-fashioned gas pump that would symbolize the time that this was built,
history,
and the original use, and would create a very obvious cue as to what this building was designed for. And I think it makes it very interesting, more interesting. The locals and planners and everything else are fabulous, and it's a fabulous design, and those are my comments. Thank you.
Well, we'll certainly take those into consideration. That underneath the canopy there's some earth mounting and things that we were doing in here in order to have groups of people gathered and to hear lectures and to, maybe as an entree into a journey into Palm Springs and visiting the historic architecture and historic sites. So that's the only thing we have in here, and it's at the moment it's quite flexible. So we still are at the point where this thing's evolving. So we'll take that into consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're not making any motion on this today. We're going to see a final plan at some point. So we've got a lot to cover unless anybody has any more
Beautiful.
questions. Thank you very much, Lance. Back to the agenda. We're going to skip to agenda item number 4, General Plan Steering Committee member. Can we have a staff report on this?
Larry Minez, our principal planner, is going to give you the update on this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. As Jean said, I'm Larry Minez. I'm principal planner, and I'm going to oversee the update of the general plan this year. It's going to take a 2-year process. We're at the beginning stages, and looking at the minutes, I believe Doug brought this to the board last month, and he handed out a section of the general plan on historic goals and objectives. My purpose here today is to ask for a volunteer to sit on a steering committee that we're putting together. It's a 20-member board committee. We are working out the details of how that format will work, but we're looking for one member of the historic board to sit on that. So you don't have to decide today. I think due to the time constraints, I have another conflict. I have another meeting to attend. So I will leave it up to Jean to possibly take the name and pass out my information, how to get a hold of me, and then we'll get going from there.
Okay. Do you know how often this board will be meeting?
Well, I haven't really worked the details out with Doug, but I'm thinking when this thing starts, the momentum starts, we're looking at maybe once a month, maybe every 2 months.
What do you gotta do?
Well, I imagine you would represent the wishes of the HSPB at this board.
That, as well as all the other,
So good.
will be, the board will actually participate in other elements. So, but you'll be representing obviously the historic side, but also as a member of the community. We're looking for a broad representation. So hopefully this will work. We're also going to community, neighborhood groups, all the planning commissions and committees and business organizations in the city, and we're asking for representatives. And that makes up the 20 members, so.
Is there anybody willing to jump in, or do we need to? That'd be great. Vice Chair Bill Scott.
Vice Chair. Well, thank you for your time, and I look forward to working with you, Williams, and that's all I have to say. Excuse me, Scott.
They're confusing over there.
Great. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you for your time.
Okay, and then we wanted to move to item 5, general plans, historic resources update. Is that Larry too?
That's from the annual report.
Right, this is
Don't wanna
enough,
take
isn't it?
over that? Okay. Yeah, that's what
Why don't you go ahead and start?
This is in relation to a attachment you have. It's the Historic Site Preservation Board Work Program 2003. I think it was discussed at the last meeting, so, and it was accepted as the board's work program for 2003. I imagine it's here for, I'm not sure why, actually.
I think just for the record, if there's any comments or discussion on the list here.
Yeah, we added the last item, the Historic Preservation Public Information Program, so that, and John, you were gonna.
I have some updated information on that. Would you like me to present that at this time?
Sure. Well, yeah, why not?
The Historic Preservation Public Information Program overview. One of the things Mayor spoke to us last time was to try and get more information available for the public. And so what we've done is I've met with.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually item number 3 that you're moving into. Is that correct? Agenda item number 3. So.
We'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. So, in terms of the historic resources update, I don't think we have anything else to add to that today, do we? Right?
Is that relating to
Okay.
the handout we had last time?
Yeah,
And all the actual ordinance and.
right. And I don't know, did the board have a chance to read that and make comments on it for today? Okay, let's work with that next month.
So number 5, we'll just continue.
Yeah,
next.
we'll
Okay.
continue number 5.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Larry.
Okay.
So let's move back to the top of the agenda items, and we'll get down to number 3. So the first one is do we have any staff update on this historic preservation ordinance?
No. Mr. Chairman, that was put on there basically in case the board has any questions. We've agreed in the past that will stay on the agenda
Okay.
as long as the board has questions.
I'm assuming there's no questions about that. So agenda item number 2 is the board member updates on contacts with potential historic site property owners. Are there any updates? Lee?
I actually do have an update, and actually it's rather good news, as a matter of fact. I had a nice conversation with Eric Mellum, who owns the San Marino Hotel, if you're familiar with that hotel.
Mhm.
Good conversation with him. He basically had been staying there for about 20 years and has been intrigued with the property and decided he might want a permanent place to stay, so he ended up buying the property. I'm not sure if you've ridden by there or not, but he's already changed the name back to the Del Marcos. So the original
Great.
name is already back.
Oh, that sign looks great.
And he actually does that sign as temporary. He's asking me
Oh,
better than that. They're doing a lot of modifications and renovations, not changing it. He's actually taking it back to the original William Cody look. He's very enthusiastic about a Class 2 designation. He just wants to know what the next step should be, whether it would come through me or through some member of the staff contacting him and asking what kind of paperwork he needs to sign. But he's very excited about that whole aspect, which is great.
Fantastic.
Good going.
Certainly, if you'd like us to put together a Class 2 type designation package, for you to give to him, we could
Okay.
certainly
That would be
accommodate
great.
that, yeah.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other staff updates on?
I did have a brief update. Don't think I gave it at the last meeting, but I was able to contact the owner of the Wexler family home on Verbena, and they are interested in pursuing a Class 1 designation. So I'm hoping to meet with the owner sometime in the coming weeks before the next meeting. I'll have more to update then.
Great. And I got an updated application form to the owners of the Ship of the Desert, who have been meaning to designate it for a couple of years, and they promised to move forward. So, hopefully. Okay, if there aren't any other ones, we'll move on now to number 3, the work-study program. So, John, you had an update on the historic preservation.
The update that I have is the mayor is concerned about tourists who come to town don't have availability of information on historic resources in Palm Springs. So I met with Liz Perkowitz of the Visitor Center, and also with Robert Ember, who is a representative of the ModComs. And the ModCom committee is going to be installing boards with pictures of historical sites and mid-century modern sites. And they're also taking a display case, and that should be happening within the next week or two. And there'll be a revolving set.
And this will be where? At the...
It's going to be in what is now they call the second room of the visitor center. You go in, there's a counter, you go through a doorway, and then this wall space in the area that is now shared with the tribe. And there's a big counter, which apparently Robert has all kinds of mid-century items. He's putting in a glass case counter and then mounted wall boards, which is a good thing. Map sales of this map are very brisk at the visitor center, and there was some discussion about having this map available at City Hall, and I'd like to give this to staff. This is the contact person to buy these maps. If anybody else is interested, I have other copies. They are available for $5 each, but if you buy them in bulk, you can get them for $3. And they could be made available for at City Hall for people to purchase. And I got a plea from the Visitor Center manager, Liz, to please get more of these. She's completely out. So I'll be most interested to see where that process is. We are completely out of these.
That is an agenda
Are
item
we out
that
of
we'll
these
get
now?
to.
Do we have more? How many more do we have? 80. The
Well,
Visitor
if-
Center, I'll call it.
If we want to skip to that, do we have an update on the architectural guide?
That's my update.
Jing? Well, and Mr. Chespak, you are the designated person to be in contact with Tracy about learning this process. Do you got anything to report?
I understood that we were preparing the same one, and we were printing it, and that the city was going to have it finished and done. Tracy and I were going to create the new brochure that isn't possible at this second.
Okay, is there an update, Jane?
I mean, I thought that we were just printing it.
Right.
We were printing the other one, right?
Well, we're still waiting for a photo, as far as I know.
We still have about 80 remaining of the older, the old guides, and they take about a week to print. In terms of the new one, I don't have any new information on that since the last
All right,
meeting.
yeah, we've been printing this
Yeah.
one for a year.
I would
So
just
I wanna
encourage
just-
that we try and move on that, because, we've been hearing about it, and I think any one of us would be happy to try and help make that happen.
And no one would let me change anything.
Well, as far as I understand, we're still waiting on this holdout for this one image.
That's correct, yes, since the last meeting.
All right. Moving down the agenda, can we, Member Scott, can you give us an update on the Preservation Foundation?
I have nothing to report about the foundation. We're having our monthly meeting tomorrow afternoon, so I may have something new then
Thank
for the
you.
next meeting.
Member Bledsoe, do we have an update on the Historical Society?
Nothing to update at this point. I realize that they're closed on Monday and Tuesday, and I usually try to call her on Monday, and that's why I've not had an update, so I will change my
Okay.
schedule to call Sally. Thanks.
And Member Williams, do we have an update on the ModCom?
Again, nothing really at this moment, except that there is a rumor going around that the community church buildings have been sold to a developer, and the ModComs have apparently would like some clarification. I don't know if we could ask, as part of this meeting, staff clarification on that, one of which is a historic site. And the meeting is this Saturday, too. That's the other.
We'll have to look into that for you, and we can bring it back for the next meeting for an update if you'd like.
That would be
Yeah.
great.
Okay.
Do you know which two buildings I'm discussing?
Do you know? Oh, you do?
Yeah.
Well, Cassie.
Pardon me. My goodness. Yes, that building, I don't believe that the property has actually exchanged hands yet. There's a proposal for a change of zone on the property from an R2 to an R3, which represents a slight increase in density. Mr. John Westman is the applicant for that, and the proposed buyer, but I don't believe the sale has actually happened. Pardon me. My goodness. There is, I don't, excuse me. There's a need for, his intent, he's met with the neighborhood group. His intent is to actually raise the newer structure that would be demolished, rather, and the old structure that is designated will be probably converted to a bed and breakfast. He's very strongly opinionated in keeping it as is. There's absolutely no intent to declassify. And in fact, he feels that it will be a focal point for further development, and that would be his entry and his, something that he'd really like. The intent is for condominium project that are, and there's public meetings that have actually occurred. He's actually gone to the Planning Commission work study session, which was a public meeting, and brought this proposal there. There was a neighborhood meeting that was basically tennis club neighborhood was invited, but it was I think it wasn't probably advertised in the newspaper, but everyone that's generally involved in that neighborhood was well attended. I was there, and certainly find I could get some contacts for you in regards to the people that were there if you wanted to have
Well, I was thinking maybe in the future, when a public meeting involves a Class 1 site, it'd be nice if we were notified so we could have the option of attending.
This was actually not through the planning department. It was through our public service, what is?
That's the Office of Neighborhood Involvement,
Yes.
Public Participation.
Okay.
I would just like to comment that I'm very saddened to hear that the plans are to raise the newer structure, which was built in 1961, and in my opinion is a classic example of mid-century modern architecture. I'm not sure if this board wants to try and get involved in that and try and talk with